Oh, the whole thing?
Yeah.
All right, so there's going to be multiple pieces. Poly means many. So there are two ways to identify, yes or no, and classify, give it a name. There are two ways to identify and classify a polynomial. You can identify or classify it by the number of terms. Or degrees. So there are two names for each polynomial. There are two ways we can identify it. Terms and degrees. But before we identify it by the number of terms, we have to first simplify. Which is combine like terms. So then you guys really quickly, I'm going to skip all the way down here, and I'm going to start at the bottom, and I'm going to put my examples down here, and we'll talk about them as we go. I have to really focus to read them. So number 3, example number 3. Is going to say 7 plus 8xy minus 4y. Then I'm going to skip a line and I'm going to put the second example. Eight y minus 9y squared plus 6y. Or, yeah, 6y, sorry. And I'll do 24g to the third minus 10 plus 5g plus 7g squared minus 8. So before we classify by the number of terms, we have to simplify, meaning combine like terms, and write in standard form, which is exponents big to small, which is a shorter way of saying largest exponent to least exponent. So let's go down here. Number 1. Anything get combined? What goes together? Can these all, are these all like terms? Are they exactly the same variable?
Yes.
No. This has an exponent of 3.
Oh.
This has an exponent of 1.
Well, 10 can go together.
Negative 10 can combine with negative 8, but everything else is its own term. If it was just 24g plus 5g plus 7g, they could all go together. But those exponents make them unlike terms. So I can put these two together. But everything else is its own piece. Let's do a little bit mental instead of writing it twice. If I was going to write it in standard form, what's my largest exponent? G to the third, so that goes first. 24 G to the third. Then what? Plus 7G squared. Then plus 5G. And last, minus 18. 24G to the third plus 7G squared plus 5G minus 18. So that is simplifying and writing in standard form. Then we talk about the number of terms. Terms are things that are separated by plus or minus signs. If there's one term, it's a monomial. Because mono means one. If there are two terms, what's the prefix for two? Binomial. If there are three terms, what's the prefix for three?
Try.
And if it's four or more, 4 to infinity, it is a polynomial. So, problem 1, I heard has 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. So it is a polynomial. All right, let's do the next one. Example number 2. Anything go together? 8y and positive 6y can go together. So now let's write it in standard form. What comes first? Negative 9y squared. Then what? Plus 14y. There are two terms, 1, 2, binomial. Let's do number 3. Anything go together? Now, before we put it any further, we have to talk about this. This is the next part of degrees. Because if I look at this, there are no exponents that we see. So what we have to do is we have to now talk about a little bit of classification by degrees so that we can learn how to write it in standard form. So, if you're talking about degrees, if it's a monomial or a single term, right? If it's a monomial or a single term, we have to look at it individually. It's the sum. What does it mean to find the sum? Add. The sum of the exponents. that belong to variables. It's the sum of the exponents that belong to variables. If it's a polynomial, four or more, but we also could include 2 terms as a polynomial word, 3 terms as a polynomial word, they just have their own specific names. But if it's poly, more than one, if it's poly, you treat each term like a monomial. And you're looking for the highest number. And I'll show you an example. Negative 2a to the 4th, b to the 4th. That's a monomial, correct? And I look at the sum of the exponents that belong to the variables. Sum is add up the exponents to get 8. If I had 8xy, what would I have? 2. If I had the number 4, what would I have?
1.
Nope. 0, because there are 0 variables. There's no variable, right? There is a variable, it's just hiding. It has an exponent of 0, because anything to the power of 0 disappears and becomes the number 1. There are some fancy names. Are you ready? If your highest degree is 0, it's called a constant. If your highest degree is 1, it's called linear. If your highest degree is 2, it's called quadratic. If your highest degree is 3, it's called cubic. If it's 4, it's called quartic. 5, what do you think? Quintic. And then we give you a break. 6 or higher, it's called the blank degree. 6th degree, 7th degree, 8th degree, 42nd degree. So let's talk through the other name of these. Example number 1, when we wrote it in scientific standard form, 24g to the 3rd plus 7g squared plus 5g minus 18, we said that was a polynomial. But what kind of degree polynomial? Which is? Cubic. it's a cubic polynomial. When we did this second one, we combined like terms. We wrote it in standard form. We said it was a binomial because there were two terms. What degree?
Quadratic.
2, which is quadratic. And last but not least, let's put this, or first off, does anything go together? No like terms, but let's write it in standard form. What's the largest exponent out there? 8xy, because there's a 1 and a 1. Minus 4y plus 7. Do you agree? And then it's a polynomial, right? So I treat each term like a monomial. What does that mean? Oh, it's the sum of the exponents that belong to the variables. What is that? It's a trinomial. And quadratic.